Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. I am joined by the Gritty Broman. How are you, brother?
I'm well, thanks.
How old are you, Brent?
Why?
Because I'm 44,
almost
45.
Yeah, you're 15 years older than me.
So you are
30. I know, weird, right?
Just 30? So you just broke out of your 20s?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that. I know all my siblings' ages and dates of birth and stuff like that. It's a major focus of mine. I am the oldest of 8. And I got all their backs. But when they're born is really not. It's a trivial thing. I don't even know my own daughter's birthdays half the time.
For real, though.
Today's podcast is with our good friend, Cory Jacobson. Cory and I were able to meet up last week and sit down and have record a couple of podcasts. 3 to be exact, and just a chance to hang out. I haven't seen Cory in quite a while. I love having conversations with Cory. You know, there's a lot of podcasts about elk and elk hunting done by Cory, and you can tune into those at Hunt Talk with Randy Newberg. You can tune into those at Elk 101. I've recorded.
If you type in Cory Jacobson into iTunes, you're going to have about 200 hours. You're good.
I've recorded with Cory, I think 30 episodes or so.
Just about.
So there's a lot of shows out there. I didn't really want to talk to Cory in great detail about calling elk again, as we've done it a million times, and there's a lot of resources for that. I really wanted to hang out with Cory and just talk about life a little bit, and that's what we did. One of the things that I really admire about Cory is his ability to succeed. Like, he's a winner. He finds a way to make things happen, you know? And one of the things that I noticed so I was very curious, like, I wanted to know how Elk 101 got to be where it is today. And the journey that Cory has taken in the hunting world throughout his life to be where he is right now in the community as an expert in what he does and in the content he provides. We have a long discussion about that. And one of the issues I wanted him to really dive into was, how does, like...
You and Cory share something in common. Neither of you shot an elk last year.
Correct. That cuts a little deep. Like I worked pretty hard. I was helping a lot of friends try to kill an elk, but at the end of the day, I had my opportunity, and I wounded a bull, tracked it 9 miles, didn't find it. It was a rough year for elk. Elk with a bow. Got one with a rifle a little bit later, but elk with a bow. I got the one shot. That's all I got that year.
And sometimes that's what you get. And
I didn't capitalize. So I was bummed. Cory had the same issue, you know, just didn't find a bull. You can watch Destination Elk and kind of follow the whole thing. You see mine, you can see his. How do you shake that off is a question that I have, you know. Hey, Cory, how do you, when you sit there and you fail, that's something you've worked really hard at trying to achieve. You know, the best, I think, winners out there have a way of shaking off the losses and coming back to the table. The other folks have a hard time, right? They have a hard time overcoming that failure. They have a hard time getting past it. And I've been there before, you know, it's discouraging. You do all that effort and it doesn't pay off. And it's easy, especially I've noticed, the closer you get to the moment of success and it doesn't pan out, the harder it seems. It seems like you should be more like happy about it because look at all you achieved. It's just that final piece. But it's almost more devastating.
I would rather miss by a football field length than by an inch.
Well, especially, you know, if you did everything perfect and then just at the finish line, it just didn't work out. So I asked Cory, and he has some insight and perspective into all of that. So it's a great discussion. I think you'll really enjoy it. Before we get into that, I did a podcast the other day with Tyler Sharp from The Modern Huntsman. For those who don't know, The Modern Huntsman is a publication where they're putting out content about that really targets more the non-hunter, but is also for the hunter. It's the articles are deep and interesting, and they run the gamut from, you know, hunting for food to hunting for conservation and science,
management.
There's all these issues, but really it's it's there to sort of bridge the gap between the hunting community and, let's say, your woke Patagonia anti-hunter, right? And some say, what's the point? Like, they're never going to agree with us. But I don't think that that's true, and I don't think that that is a way we should approach what we do. And the more we can invite the non-hunter into our world, the better off we're going to be.
Perception is always shifting. I mean, just look 5 years ago when you shot a black bear, as opposed to this year when you shoot a black bear.
Yeah,
totally different reactions.
Or 2007 when I shot my first big black bear.
Yeah, dude. People try to crucify you.
Yeah, it was different then. Totally different then. People are asking me how to can bear now. I got one kind of bear hunting question about the ethics of it and morality of it out of, I don't know, thousands of
comments,
positive comments on all the bear hunting we did this year and the canning and the podcast. I mean, night and day. Perception is changing. And that's why I say you can't change that, though, if you don't present our message in a way that resonates with those who have never killed before, that have never eaten wild game.
I don't think Tyler could have done what he's doing now.
Tyler
10,
Sharp?
15, yeah. I don't think he could have done that 10, 15 years ago. I think he's seeing a need right now, and I think he's doing a pretty good job.
Well, I bring it up because there's a comment that came through that I wanted to read. A gentleman wrote in and he said, like most college-educated lefties, this 13-year-old has already labeled anyone, and he's referring to Tyler Sharp, being 13 years old, has already labeled anyone who disagrees with him as bad. Lovely. Fools like this fellow will only serve to poison the well, Brian. I really wish you could have listened to him do the same thing on the Hunters Collective, or I think it's the Hunting Collective podcast with Ben O'Brien. You may have decided not to do this interview. Do you fellows hear yourselves? I happen to agree with almost everything you espoused. But labeling people who are different from you yourselves as dumb rednecks is a poke in the eye to the very people you should be extending the olive branch. I am disappointed. This comment you can't find, by the way, on YouTube because the term dumb rednecks was used.
It was flagged.
And so it was flagged, and I never would have seen it except it comes through my email.
It's against community guidelines.
It's against community guidelines. So someone else wrote in and said, did you delete my comment? And it's like, no, but he used the term dumb redneck as well. And so I think it just pisses me off that YouTube flags that stuff. Just infuriates me. It's like, don't censor, don't, they should be treating this.
Their own
this
butts.
Is like a phone call. I'm paying for a phone service. If you're a curator of content, then we should be able to sue you for all the things that go wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a different discussion. The point here, though, that this gentleman was making, I understand where he's coming from. Fools like this will only serve to poison the well. He didn't have a lot of nice things to say about Tyler, 13-year-old, labeling everyone that disagrees with him as bad. Now, I went back and listened to the podcast a couple of times, and I tried to find where we mentioned dumb rednecks. We never used that term ever, as far as I could find. And I don't think we ever said that or meant that in any way either.
Was he talking about the other podcast?
To say that hunting TV has done a disservice to hunting, I don't think is the same as saying everyone who disagrees with me is an idiot or is
a dumb
redneck. That's not it at all. I think to say that hunting TV and people who don't present hunting in a way that is palatable to a non-hunter, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, we should be careful with how we present hunting. And we're a minority.
Yeah.
I've said this a million times. We're a minority in the world. We're a minority. Hunting folks are a minority.
We're 10%. The antis are 10%. We're vying for the other 80%.
Something like that, right? And so we have a responsibility to put forward a message that can be related to by that crowd. That means like talking about food. And hunting for meat and consumption. It means talking about conservation. It means talking about these things that the modern huntsman is talking about. If you sit there and you're like standing over a dead animal and you're like, hell yeah, did you see that? I blew his head off. that's going to have a negative effect. Do I think that those people are stupid, dumb rednecks? No, and I never said that. I think that but I think it's important to talk about these issues, and I don't think I didn't hear the podcast
with Ben O'Brien.
On the Hunting Collective. I didn't hear what Tyler said on that. I pushed Tyler, though, and I asked him these things like, don't you feel like you have a potential of being seen as elitist? Mm-hmm. And as you rush to embrace the non-hunting community and bring them into our fold, are you compromising our own way of life? Mm-hmm. And are you throwing our own hunters under the bus to please this other side? Tyler mentioned how he really preferred the word virtuous to pretentious.
Virtuous is.
I don't like the word virtuous either because I hear virtue signaling.
Yeah.
But I know what he was trying to say. Mm-hmm. He's trying to live life in a good way that makes an impact in the world and in a noble way. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do think that the modern huntsman and Tyler can run the risk of alienating the hunting community by being the woke crowd. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do it our way, then you're doing it wrong, right? Mm-hmm. I think, and we talk about that in the podcast. So I didn't understand the comment because I felt like we had a pretty fair and balanced conversation about it. And Tyler clarified his position, and I truly believe he doesn't believe that people who don't think like him are bad. I don't think that that's true. I think that it's much more nuanced than that. It's not that black and white.
And that's the whole point of the modern huntsman, is that this is a giant conversation. And that he's trying to bring some nuance to it so that both sides can enjoy it.
And I have criticized some of the posts put out by the modern huntsman a few times where I'm like, this comes off as pretentious to me and stuck up. And I am better than so-and-so because, I don't take any trophy shots with animals.
I only hunt in flannel.
Yeah, like the sort of thing.
Hipster hunter.
So I think that, again, but I think you have to come to the table and have these discussions on both sides to bring value to basically to get anywhere long term. You can't do an us versus them. So I was glad I did the podcast. I don't regret it. I think people should listen to it. And I think that having this discussion with Tyler also gives him pause too to think about, okay, are we framing this message correctly? Are we being fair to those who aren't perceived as elitist, And so I think it's good stuff. Anyway, but I do appreciate the comment on both sides. I think it's a great discussion. I don't mean to disappoint anyone. I don't like to hear that, but when you have difficult conversations about touchy subjects, you can't please everyone. It's just bound to happen. So, but I hope you still like the show and keep tuning in. Please sign up for the newsletter. We are giving away a brand new pair of Leupold 10x42 Sany MBX5 binoculars on September 15th.
Wow, that just rolled off your tongue. Wow. Did you practice that?
No, it's embedded in my soul. Sign up because you'll be entered to win if you're part of the newsletter. And sign up because YouTube doesn't inform you unless you hit the bell to have it ring. You
have to subscribe and then hit the bell.
And then hit the bell. Yeah.
It's a two-step process.
The subscribe doesn't notify you. Instagram, Facebook, they don't really reach my whole audience very well. Algorithms and such, and they derank your content. So sign up for the newsletter and we can boom, shoot a message directly to you and say, hey, we have a new video out. Check it out.
And if we manage to do one more than once a week, it'll be a miracle.
Yeah, we're planning to do, by the way, hunting film every other Sunday at the very least. We have 30 of them scheduled to be produced. When we have a series that's like a 4-part or 5-part, like this TAR series, we're going to try to put those out consecutively. Because one thing I can't stand is to be left hanging on a cliffhanger. So we're going to try only to leave you hanging for 1 week max when we have a series. But we might have a week or two between the next series. But once we start rolling, we're hoping to keep you guys busy with new content every weekend, every Sunday,
so we're going to keep
Monday.
doing the podcast, but we're dedicated to at least every other Sunday getting a film out.
Yep, so be looking for that stuff. Sign up for the newsletter and use the code GRITTY at Mountain Ops to save some money. Free shipping for sure, but also maybe a little extra discount or a hat, shirt, stuff like that. And also use the code GRITTY to get yourself some sissy sticks. We get a little bit of money from each one of those sales, and they're a great pole, great company, carbon fiber upper, aluminum lower. It's cool trekking pole. So check that out. And thanks for tuning in, and enjoy this podcast with my buddy, Cory Jacobson. And stay gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined by my buddy, Cory Jacobson, Mr. Elk 101.
Elk 101.
Elk calling champion this year.
Yes, for
right.
a few months here, yeah.
And that is number 10, 11?
Yeah, it's
12?
I don't know.
You've won again.
Yeah, it's somebody asked this year, are you ready to quit? And I said, no, I'm too competitive and I'm too old to do anything physically competitive, so this is my outlet.
Well, I want to get into that today, folks. If you want to learn about elk hunting from Cory Jacobson, like the details, the tactics, there's a lot of elk talk podcasts out there right now, right?
There are a few.
With you and Randy Newberg.
Yep.
There's a number that you and I have done.
31, I think, episodes together on the Gritty Podcast.
Somebody said the other day, someone wrote in and said, I would like you to interview different people than you've interviewed before. And, there's every week or so, there's somebody new generally, but I do go back to, people that I really enjoy hearing from and having good conversations with. And I it's sort of like Rogan, right? Like he brings a lot of the same people on.
Yep.
But I still really enjoy it every time he does.
Yeah, they're talking about different topics, but the same people. And I think that's what I've found is you find people you enjoy talking to, regardless of what you're talking about. There's people that you just enjoy talking to.
Well, I've said this before. Selfishly, this podcast is a sort of a selfish endeavor. Like there's a part of me that wants to bring information and content to others, and and maybe they get a nugget of inspiration or motivation or knowledge out of the show. But it's also in large part that's a byproduct because I want it for me. It's what I want to talk about, not what I necessarily if I really wanted to pad the numbers of the podcast, I could just do a podcast every week on how to kill elk and mule deer.
Totally. Because elk is the hot thing. We were talking about that with YouTube videos. You want to get a lot of views on YouTube, you better have an elk hunt because
tar hunt ain't going to get you there. But I just love, I don't know, I like the different adventures that are out there. And I like the different conversations that we can have. So on today's podcast, we were talking about this before we turned the camera on. Cory, you're a really competitive person. Like,
I've been told that, yes.
Like my buddy Anthony is really competitive too. We've drawn correlations between the two of you in the past. And I want to talk a little bit about that because being competitive, driven to win or to beat other people or to achieve, even competitive with your own success, right?
Sure.
You're like, I've killed an elk so many years in a row. I've not failed during a season to kill an archery bull. And then last year you did.
Thank you for twisting the knife that was already in my back, reminding me of that.
But that competitive nature that you have, what do you attribute that to?
Ego.
Is it?
I don't know. I've thought a lot about it, and there is on some level there is pride. There's no doubt you can't not say that, but at the same time, I think a responsibility to magnify the talent you've been given, and I think that there's a lot of examples of people that could have sat back and been good enough and not worked harder. But they were driven to work harder. And, whatever that drive is, whether it's internal, external, I think it's different for a lot of people.
So that begs the question, is a competitive nature good or bad?
I think it is like a lot of different things in moderation and keeping it in checks and in balances is good. I think when you start competing with people and you look at it like I need to step on that person to get to the next level, like that person's in front of me, I need to step on him, push him down, and climb to the next level, I think that's unhealthy. I think when you look at it, I'm going to do everything I can do to be the best I can be and worry about, and for me, that's really how I try to keep it. And it's a continual realignment, but I really try to better myself continually. And I think sometimes a measuring board is a head-to-head competition with somebody else, whether it's another company, another person, ourselves, whatever it is. But I think that you have to have a target. And a lot of times that's somebody who's at the top and you're going for that, or it's, you might look at that and say, yeah, they're at the top, but I'm better than that. I'm going to move past them. But I think at the end of the day, the healthy part of it has to be if you're competing against another person, you have to keep a good relationship with that person. You can't look at them as the enemy because they're not. Internally, you're the enemy. And you've got to overcome yourself and whether, we're talking about a lot of different things here, business, physical things. But yeah, I mean, really the competition is you and you've got to better yourself. And that other person isn't the enemy. They aren't the bad guy.
I think you see it sometimes in business. You'll see two businesses competing with each other. And one philosophy is, here, let's sue them and keep them out of the marketplace. Let's do something.
Let's badmouth them, make them look bad, and then try to gain a little bit on them.
Right. Let's find a way to crowd them out of the marketplace to win, but not actually compete with a better, more innovative product, not actually compete by producing something that's better and more valuable to the consumer, adding value to everyone. It's a different sort of competition, like you said, where you see that other entity as the enemy and thereby justify any way of crowding them out no matter what.
And the way I look at it is if somebody's standing in my way of being the best, if my goal is to be the best and somebody's standing in the way, I have two choices. I can either hate them because they're keeping me from being the best, but ultimately it's on me. I mean, that responsibility lands on me. If I want to be the best at something, I've got to do the work. And they really have no bearing on how hard I work. And at the end of the day, I can look back and say, I worked hard enough to pass them. But I'll use the example. And I tell my kids this all the time. There's two ways to own the biggest house in town. You can go around, you can own your little trailer house, and you can go around and tear down everybody else's house until yours is the biggest one in town. Or you can just mind your own business and get to work and keep building on your house until it's bigger. And I think there's a lot of people and a lot of businesses that they don't want to work. They don't want to work at their own improvement. They'd rather tear down the things that are around them and look around and say, mine's the biggest now. But theirs hasn't actually grown. They haven't improved.
That's a really good analogy, Cory.
Thanks.
I'm going to use that on my kids now. That is a great analogy because it is still a trailer at the end of the day. You actually didn't add a lot of value to the world. You took from it.
Yeah.
In fact.
Yeah. You spend all your energy tearing down everything around you when you could put that exact same energy into building yourself.
But don't you, because we live in a world today where I feel like, tearing down other people, to make your trailer the biggest house in the neighborhood. I feel like that's kind of common practice with social media and stuff today. Just the way that we operate, it seems like that's the standard mode of operation.
Yeah. No, I think it goes back to that entitlement attitude of, I want to have this. I deserve this. I shouldn't have to work for this. I just want it, so I should be able to have it. And when you start getting into competition type things, it doesn't work like that. The only way to be the best at something is to work the hardest. And, there's obviously examples of people who have gotten somewhere without a lot of hard work, but really the formula is just hard work. And being entitled doesn't work to put you in first place.
Yeah, you hear Cameron Haynes talk a lot about being the hardest worker in the room. is how he wins. He's just consistent. Goes out, runs every day. That's how he wins a race. That's how he does what he does. It's not by tearing other people down. It's by doing his own thing as best he can.
Yep. And at the end of the day, yes, the other people are measuring points for him, but he's not competing with them. He's competing with himself.
The guy in the mirror.
Yeah. That's your most fierce competition you're ever going to face.
Yeah. There's this quote I like, success can only be bought with the currency of hard work. And at the end of the day, that's really it. Success is with hard work.
The only place success comes before hard work is, or before work is, or yeah, the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. I put hard work in there and start thinking H comes before S.
Yeah. Well, so, I can see where competition can be a bad thing and where competition can be a good thing.
Yeah.
How do you think competition has helped you throughout your life? You said it was kind of rooted in a bit of ego at times.
Yeah, I think anything we look at, and I think it's healthy to realize that there is. I mean, especially when I was younger, I wanted the recognition. I wanted the attention. And I think that's natural. I think it can be unhealthy. But I think it's natural. If it's not controlled, it becomes unhealthy. But I think everybody wants recognition for something. Whether it's I want to be recognized as a really nice person, or I want to be recognized as being wealthy, or I want to be recognized as being, the strongest guy that somebody knows. I think we all have a natural craving for recognition. And, you look at parenting or anything, children want to be recognized. They want attention. They want reaffirmation that they're good. And so I think, from that standpoint, we all have a little bit of that, and it just depends on how hard we chase it or look for that. So I think, a lot of mine, I was a terrible athlete. I was uncoordinated. I was skinny. I wasn't an athlete, but all the cool people were good athletes. And so that drove me to want to be a cool person, an athlete. And I realized I wasn't born with any talent. I wasn't born with any strength. If I wanted to be a good athlete, I had to work at it, and I had to work like crazy. I had to work 10 times harder than anybody else to get to their level. And it took a lot of hard work, but it's something that you can work towards. I was never an elite athlete, but I did make it to play college basketball. And I was a terrible basketball player in middle school. I mean, I was wearing the track uniform. I was the only kid on the bench wearing a silk track uniform. Everybody else had basketball uniforms. I played on the freshman team as a sophomore. I mean, all these things that just, I think for a lot of people, that would crush them.
Yeah.
And it would be like, it's the coach's fault. I hate the coach. The coach doesn't like me. The coach isn't being fair. This other person's dad's a coach. He gets to play all the time. For me, it fueled me. That failure fueled me. And I said, I'm not sitting on the bench with a track uniform next year. I'm not playing on the freshman team next year. What do I need to do to get better? And the answer was spend 4 hours a day down at the local basketball court. And when nobody else was down there, when it was pouring down rain, when it was 110 degrees out, whatever it was, I was there. And 2 years later, I had surpassed most of those other people I had played with or played against. And of course, I blossomed late, so it was in college. But I think that a lot of those people were born with a talent. They were born with skills, natural ability. They didn't have to work at it. And that took them so far. But in order to go to that next level and be more competitive, it's just that formula of hard work.
Have you read the book, The Millionaire Mind?
I have not.
It's like the sequel to the book, The Millionaire Next Door. The Millionaire Next Door, they sort of profile statistically, like what a millionaire really is, because you have these ideas of it's this doctor that makes $500,000 a year, and those people really don't have often wealth because they spend every dime that they make. So what is it that's a millionaire? And you find out that most of them don't make more than $70,000 a year. They have paid for cars. They don't use credit cards, and you start to go through these things that kind of, this is what a millionaire really is. Right. And then these are kind of fake millionaires. They're the ones that have a lot of
should have
income, but should have been, but aren't. If they were to lose their job or whatever, like they don't have a stockpile of wealth.
Yeah. Well, not only that, they don't have the structure, the discipline in place, so that if they did lose all of their money, they would still be able to survive. Which I think that we're talking finances now, but I think for somebody who makes $70,000 a year and is a millionaire, they've lived in a way that would enable them to live off of next to nothing,
right,
and be comfortable doing it.
And the reason I bring that up is the sequel is The Millionaire Mind. That book went into, okay, what made these people the way they are? What characteristics do they all kind of have in common? And what was ironic was some 70%. I mean, these numbers could be off, but I can't remember. But the gist was, for example, like 70% of, these millionaires that exist in America today, they flunked in school.
Yeah.
They sat at the front of the class because they were failures, and they got kicked out of school often. They couldn't get along with teachers. They were told that they would fail at everything in life, and every time they got hammered on, told they were a loser, that they were going to fail, that they didn't have what it took, they watched these other classmates like sail through statistics and calculus and biology, and while they just kept failing, even they worked hard. That this message where they were getting hammered on all the time, that opposition drove them to prove those people wrong and to become strong in the face of adversity.
Yep.
And so it was very rare for someone who was just naturally gifted and good at everything to actually become a millionaire.
And you look at, children, and this is going to be a very general statement. I don't know a whole lot of millionaires, but you look at children who grow up in a millionaire family, and typically those children struggle to maintain wealth. And you look at a lot of the people who work their tails off and achieve that millionaire status. And again, that's just, we're using that as a target right now, that $1 million. But those people who struggle to get there, I think, are the ones who get there and keep it. And the ones who are just given it, they just don't appreciate it. They haven't worked for it. It's not.
Or they don't know how to get it in the first place. Because
totally. If they lose it, they don't know how to get back there.
Yeah, it's something that they didn't build, they received.
Yeah.
I found it interesting because in today's world, we're told that, if you go to some oppressive classroom and the teacher says you can't do it and you're going to be terrible, we need to sue the teacher and fire her. Everyone should get a trophy and everyone's really good at stuff.
Yeah.
We're all gifted. And, I love that line in The Incredibles where, is it Flash?
I don't know.
Flash. Flash is like, he gets in trouble from his mom for using his powers, and she's like, look, Flash, you're not special. You're just like, or no, that's not what she said. She said, look, Flash, everyone is special. And Flash said, Mom, that's just a way of saying nobody is special. And I love that line because there's some truth in that, right? Yeah. Like there's a cold, hard truth. You had to face it. You weren't good as an athlete. You weren't.
Yep.
And so there were people
equal playing time. I wanted equal playing time.
Yeah, but there were people that were special, better than you, that were much better than you. And to try to say that everyone is the same isn't being intellectually honest with yourself.
And it's not helping those who aren't the same to grow. And everybody's going to have something they can be good at. There's people like me that I was born able to bugle. That's right. It, though. I mean, that's not a very impressive talent. I mean, on the whole scheme of things,
it's actually quite coveted in our community.
I was going to say, within the hunting industry, yes, that's a pretty cool thing. But in the overall scheme of the world, wow, you can bugle elk. Really impressive.
Right. You're like,
I think I saw a class. It was either that or underwater BB stacking. I chose underwater BB stacking, and it's just
it's like when someone was talking to Brunella about what's it like to be famous, and he's like, in the hunting community, like let's he's like, if you want overwhelming male adoration, become like a hunting celebrity, being facetious, of course, but But I think that in the face of adversity, having the personality or the character to try to prove people wrong in a positive way,
Yep.
that being the core characteristic of what made a millionaire and a successful human being in general. What is it that, because the other option in that scenario is to be the victim.
Yep.
I can't be this and I can't do that. And, my teacher said this about me, so I never really could succeed. I couldn't play basketball because my coach, everything's someone else's fault. So how do you become the person that in the face of that says, no, I'm going to prove you wrong?
I don't know. And I look
Cory,
at
I need some answers.
I know. No, and I look at several examples. My children come home from school and they say, I hate math. My teacher's terrible. Like, so you hate math because your teacher's bad? Like, that doesn't make sense. Well, I don't understand it because they don't explain it. Like, well, don't you have some responsibility yourself to take some responsibility and understand it? Like, they might not explain it the way you understand it, but that puts responsibility on you. And I use the example with them all the time. I was in college and going through mechanical engineering, and I was talking to, I think it was my fluid dynamics professor, and I told him, I don't remember the exact class, but it was a tough class. And I just told him, the class is hard. He's like, that doesn't have to be hard. And I said, well, this professor we have is horrible. And he looked me right in the eyes and he said, there's no such thing as a bad professor, only a bad student. And it hit me, not as hard then, but now as I have children and stuff, I look at it, it's like, if you want to learn something, the only excuse is on you. It's nobody else's fault. Everything is out there to learn. And if it's not out there, you can still go and learn it. There's a personality that doesn't want to put in the work. So if they fail at something, they instantly blame somebody else. And then there's another personality that if they fail at something, inside that fuels them. And like, I'm going to conquer this. And sometimes it's internal motivation. Sometimes it's external. Sometimes we want attention and credit for achieving something. Sometimes it's just that internal feeling of I did that. I knew I could do that.
Okay. Let me ask you this then. So, you just said that someone's telling them they can't do it. And you have the person that says, like, you're right, I can't do it. And you have the other person that says, no, I can, and I'm going to prove you wrong. Which of those two people has the greater level of humility? And do you
That's
think?
Deep. So there's the person who is told they can't do it, and then they don't do it.
Yep. And then there's the person who is told they can't do it and says, you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong. I can do it.
I think that neither of those instances would define your humility. I think it's the attitude when you do it, or the fact that if you blame somebody because you didn't do it, that defines your humility. So the person who becomes a victim and says, I wasn't able to do this, out of one state, if coach would have put me in fourth quarter type of a thing, it's somebody else's fault. That's pride. And the person who accomplishes something and goes around telling everybody he's accomplished something, that's pride. The person who digs deep, and gets the work done and accomplishes something and gets recognition from 1,000 different angles, but never once clamors for that recognition, I think that shows a lot of humility.
And that last situation, like, because I think sometimes there's a perception that if someone comes to you and says, you can't do this, you cannot do it, and you're like, oh yeah, yes I can, I'll prove to you that I can, that can come across, I think, as ego.
Yeah.
Because shouldn't you just listen to someone who knows more than you? Who are you to think that you can do this?
Yeah.
But I think that it's actually misleading, because it takes a certain level of humility to say, you're right. Like right now, I can't do it. You're right. I got my butt kicked when I tried to play basketball at this level with these people. But I can work my way there. There's a humility in that. There's a point where you can take a step toward growth, because you're admitting at the outset, as part of that you don't quite have what it takes.
I suck.
That you suck. Because without that humility at the outset, and to me, it can be arrogant, it can be prideful.
If you do it and you pound your chest every time you make an accomplishment, if the first thing you do when you make the team is turn around and see, haha, I told you so, you were wrong. Yeah, that's ego, that's pride. But if you make it I tell my kids again, I go, we've got 3 teenagers, so a lot of life lessons coming up to the surface here. But if you let your work do the talking, and you don't have to do the talking, that's humility. And there's nothing wrong with going out and working as hard as you can and being the best at something and leaving it at that. But I think so many times we see people saying, I'm the best, or look at what I've accomplished. And I tell, again, my children, if somebody has to tell you they're the best at something, they probably aren't. And the person you want to look for is the one that you want to be like.
Yeah.
Not the one who tells you that you should be like them.
I find like humility is an evasive thing for all of us. Like we're always...
And it's a moving target.
and if you're not proactively aware of the need to have it, then you're not cultivating it proactively, then you're severely lacking in it, because it is a deliberate thing that has to be worked on all the time. Like, I think Ryan Holiday said, ego, it's a daily roll call.
Yeah.
Humility is a daily roll call. You might have it today, but 2 weeks from now, you could lose it real quick.
Oh, absolutely. And you look, his other book, The Obstacle is the Way. And I think that ties right in with what we're talking about, that something standing in front of you can be the greatest motivation to conquer that.
I do think that there's a difference between acknowledging that you have a weakness, but having the foresight and the confidence to believe that, and the faith that if you put in the work that you could overcome that.
Right.
That's a whole lot different than saying you're just wrong and then not putting in the work.
Yeah. I think that's pride.
Describe to me how that's pride.
I think that somebody who gives up and doesn't work for something, that's a form of pride.
It's like victimhood.
It is. Yeah.
Tell me why you think that's a form of pride. How does that work in your mind? Because, they're a victim.
Yeah. But
they were taken
created
advantage of.
They've created that personality. They've created that character.
What if they didn't, though? I mean, if they were genuinely a victim of something.
Well, that's different. If you're genuinely a victim, if you are physically held back from doing something.
What if you're just emotionally held back?
Well, then there's that too.
At what point is it okay to say I was a victim and it's not okay?
I don't think it's ever okay to say you're a victim. I mean, I'm not talking legal things here where somebody's taking advantage.
Yeah.
I'm talking psychologically, emotionally. There are people that go through abuse and all of that, and they are victims. But I think for what we're talking about, when we want to achieve something and somebody tells us we can't do it, or we aren't given the path to do it, somebody doesn't come and hand us the path and say, here's what it's going to take for you to be the best at this. A lot of times people say I'm a victim because somebody didn't give me that, or I'm a victim because somebody told me I couldn't do that. And that's a choice they made. That's 100% a choice. And in instances where people don't have the choice, where they literally, physically don't have the choice, they are truly a victim. And that's not at all what we're talking about, but you always have a choice.
Yeah.
You always have a choice to rise above somebody's criticism, to rise above somebody's negativity. And that's your choice. You get to make that.
You could wallow pretty quickly, though, in the victim space pretty easily. Like you could put that warm blanket of victimhood on and you can be like,
I couldn't.
I don't have to get better. Yeah, I shouldn't have to because I'm already like the best. The judges just didn't see it right. Right.
So you're talking about elk calling.
Yeah.
now.
I mean, like that, you could easily pull that, right? Like, it was rigged. It was this, it was that.
And I've seen, and going specifically into that, I saw a long time ago, 2 different personalities of people who enter that contest. Mm-hmm. And there were those who they sounded terrible, but they were always complaining. The guy who won was terrible. The judges didn't know what they were listening for. The judges have never elk hunted. They're always making these excuses about why they didn't do good. They show up the next year and they sound exactly the same. And I saw that and recognized first, this is a human judged contest. It's subjective.
Yeah.
I might think that I sound absolutely off the charts good, and I don't even make the finals. That just happens. That's part of entering. So when I enter that contest, in the back of my mind, that's a very real possibility, and I have to be prepared for that. And I don't think a lot of people are prepared for that, and then they become a victim immediately because, in their mind, they've practiced, they're at a competition, they're obviously at some level of confidence to be able to enter the competition and think they're going to win. I don't know why you would enter a competition that you didn't feel you were going to win. So everybody who's there has some level of confidence. So to not win should come as a disappointment. But you can either choose to not do anything about it and complain, or to work like crazy to get better, to see what the guys who are winning are doing and mimic that and try to model after that. And, I'll share a nugget here, but it's not an elk calling contest. It's a calling contest to try to please a human ear.
Yeah.
And I've honed over the years.
You don't have an elk there, and you're not judging who's able to pull it in.
What does the human mind think an elk sounds like?
Mm-hmm.
And you're appealing to a human ear. So there are certain elements of elk calling that I try to highlight because I know the human ear is going to hear that and say, that was pretty.
That. Yeah.
Yeah. And fortunately, the same sounds are going to work in hunting. So it's not like, I'm a contest caller only. And,
right.
It goes both ways. But there is an element of pleasing the human ear, not calling in an elk that's taken place in that contest.
Back to the millionaire mind and these people being told they can't achieve. And then that level, that modicum of humility that they have to possess in order to then go back to the drawing board and grow. I feel like that's very applicable to elk hunting, because back to your point about someone complaining about the judges, it's rigged. Then they come back the next year and they do the exact same thing, and they're in the same place they were before because they didn't have the humility to recognize that there's room for growth. They didn't take the actions needed to adapt and change. And that's hard. Change is hard. Growth is hard.
Yep.
It's like my brother's been learning to edit film. It's like I rammed, it's like I burned him to the ground and rebuilt him. Like literally it's like the military. I mean, I had to tell him how bad he sucked for weeks before he got better. And I'm proud of him because Brent has that ability to stay humble, to take the criticism and then adapt and become really good at things. And when he was younger, he was terrible. He was one of the most rebellious people. As soon as you told him any criticism, he was like, "You're full of crap." He worked at Walmart or Walgreens. He had a dead-end job at dead-end life. And he looks back on that, and it's like everything that prevented him from being something greater was his ego. Yeah. It was that lack of humility. So in the hunting world, I think you can go out and fail at, let's say, elk hunting.
And you can, and 90% of the people who do it every year do.
And then come back the same way, having not learned.
Yeah.
How does a guy get around that?
So I use the analogy, the success rates for elk hunting are around 10%. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is not that the education isn't available, that the knowledge isn't available, that the wolves have killed all the elk. None of those are all just excuses. What it really comes down to is 10% of the population has enough ambition to be successful. And it's really a reflection of individual character and ambition more so than elk hunting itself. And I have an online course. People can sign up for it and learn everything I know about elk hunting. I mean, it's not a marketing gimmick. It's not, hey, come and learn how to do
right.
this. And I poured out everything I know about elk hunting to help other people. And I get comments weekly, you're going to ruin elk hunting. There's only 3 states that offer over-the-counter elk hunting, and they're going to be draws within 5 years because success rates are going to blow through the roof. They're not. The same population of elk hunters are there. The same 10% have ambition. success rates aren't going to change. It's just going to increase the learning curve and the speed of that learning curve for those who are willing to put in the work. They're going to get to success anyway. The other 90% just, they'll stumble into luck once in a while, but they don't have the work ethic to make it consistent.
It's so ironic, on the way here, to do this podcast, I was thinking about this year's upcoming elk season and all the things that I've learned that I know about hunting and elk hunting in general, bow hunting, archery, that all go into, harvesting an elk.
Yeah.
And
it's a long list.
And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about the earliest podcast. And what brought this up was I was actually on the way here, I was watching or listening to a Primos hunting video. It's got the classic jingle, it's the same Primos intro. You got Wilbur sitting there talking about, in 1987 or something, this is the truth, It's very nostalgic for me because I grew up watching the Truth videos. And I'm looking at that and I was thinking about, when I first started watching all those videos and I was first learning how to call and use a diaphragm, and I was hanging out with Jim Horn teaching me how to call at Sportsman's Warehouse. And Ben and I and Anthony, we were just doing our thing, fast forward, and I know how to kill an elk now. Like, I have a lot of knowledge and skills, and you can always get better.
Oh, totally.
But I understand those basic things like wind and setup and what will probably work and what won't. And at the end of the day, often it does boil down to doing everything right and then a little bit of luck.
Yep.
You just need the animal to kind of do what you need it to do. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, at this point, though, and even earlier on when we've tagged out a bunch and we only kind of had some basic skills and we just got lucky, it came down to ambition. And I was just thinking the same thing on the way here. As much as I want to learn, maybe how to tweak how I call a little bit, get better at some maybe cow sounds and maybe sequence in a calling kind of routine. At the same time, I realized at this point that it's my hunts, if I'm going to tag out, often are going to consist on me being ambitious enough to just do it until I succeed.
Yep.
And that right there, at the end of the day, really is the bulk of, I think, the difference between those that are success. There's know-how.
Yep.
But once you have that, it does boil down to, like you said, this 10% of people that are willing to just bang their head on a wall until they can achieve it.
Yep. And it goes back, that quote, 90% of the elk are killed by 10% of the people. There's a reason. That 10% has something. And, for those listening, they have something. That this isn't to dissuade and say only 10% of you are going to. There's a reason they're listening to the podcast. There's a reason, they're doing everything they can to increase their opportunities for success. And because of that, they'll be successful. It's just the ones who are sitting there, saying, it's this or that. You don't have to have camouflage. You don't have to have the fanciest bow. You don't have to have that. I'm just going to show up and go hunting this year. And, they show up. They don't know where the elk are. They spend 7 days trying to find the elk. Well, the wolves chased them off. Or they're still there somewhere. Even with hunting pressure, the elk are somewhere. Somebody's going to kill an elk with hunting pressure. You just have to decide if it's going to be you.
It still goes back to the hard work thing, too.
It does.
I joke about this. Of all the hunts I've done in my life, and they all come with different challenges. The one thing I can say about archery elk hunting is this, and even rifle, but mostly archery elk hunting. I don't know why, but elk hunting just is a grind. It's never easy. It's always a chase. It's always physically demanding. It's always mentally demanding. It's always a grind. I can't say that's true about most of the deer hunts I do. The goat, the sheep, the you name the species, bear. It's not a physical, mental grind. Elk,
sure, there might be elements that are challenging, but yeah, that physical, mental combination there of...
There's just nothing easy about elk hunting.
Yep.
It tests you every time. And I'm not talking about, hunting Arizona, flat draw, like 400-inch bulls running around,
Talking over the counter, public land,
yeah.
Colorado, Idaho,
They're just
Montana.
a grind.
Yep.
They're a grind every time. I will say this, that growing up in Oregon is a different animal compared to growing up in Idaho and some of these other states. When I drew some nice tags in Oregon and then I hunted out of state for the first time, I was like, well, dang it. The draw tags in Oregon are as good as the over-counter tags in like Idaho, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana. Yeah. It's just like, that was a real disappointment for me to realize that, that there was that disparity there. There's a lot of elk in Oregon, don't get me wrong, and we killed our share, but it's not my go-to state for elk hunting, that's for sure. It's a grind. Are you going back there this year?
Oh man, absolutely.
See, the Roosevelt thing is a different animal, though.
It is, and it's a different grind. It's still a grind. It's not a 15-mile at 3,000-foot elevation gain grind, but there's a mental aspect to it that it's almost you can't see. Mm-hmm. Everything's brushy, everything's wet, everything's trying to grab you. The elk don't want to cooperate, and I love it.
I grew up doing that.
Yeah.
But why do you like it?
I think because it's different and it's new and it's a challenge and it's elk hunting. And so, I'm looking at expanding from here. I think Roosevelt opened my eyes to there are Sitka deer. There are elk in Fiordland. There are red stags. There are
that call
axis bucks that all call aggressively during the rut. But now it's like I can hunt year round. Like I can hunt axis deer in May and June. I can hunt Fiordland in the spring. All these different places that for me it's the calling, and that's the calling and the habitat, I think, is so just intriguing when it comes to elk hunting.
I love the Oregon coast habitat. That's where I've chased a lot of blacktail. We did a lot of Roosevelt elk hunting. I've never killed a Roosevelt elk. We would just bomb down there on weekends. And you had a lot of close calls. It was fun. But there's days and days of hunting and never seeing anything.
Yeah.
You can't glass and it's funny, like you roll up into, let's say, Idaho, a new glass, because you can see for miles. And you're like,
in some places.
There's a patch of elk like 3 miles over there, and there's a patch of elk like 4 miles.
The hard part's done. You found elk.
Right. But look how spread out they are in these groups. Well, you put those same groups on Mount Hood, and you're just wandering forever trying to get within vocal range of something if they're talking.
Yeah.
And it just becomes what are the odds that I wander that direction to where those elk happen to be?
Bump into that one little basin where the only elk on that mountain are.
That's where the cat road shuffle helps. Like if there is a road system in that densely packed kind of forest hunt, you can cover ground, call, and locate these animals, because you're not going to see them with binos. You're not going to spot them from, a mile away with a spotter in open country. This is a different game.
Yeah.
But I do like the way that you can call an animal in super close, because they can't see either.
Well, and that's the other challenge of hunting that country, is it's so thick that I'm used to, if we call in 5 elk, there'd better be an arrow in one of them. Just you call in 5 elk, you have to call one into a shooting lane. You have to get one that comes into an open area where you can get a shot. Mm-hmm. In Oregon, you might call in 20 elk and not get one in a shooting lane. You might call 20 elk into 20 yards and not even see one of them. And so it definitely adds a whole nother level of challenge.
Well, I think we should wrap up this discussion. I really wanted to get into the whole idea of competition and how it is juxtaposed with ego and how humility plays a role and things like that. Because I think that those are real world things that character, I guess, aspects of a person's character that really do need to be developed if you're going to succeed in the Elkwoods, and not just there, but in life.
Yeah. No, and it really, we've talked before, and we talked about ego as the enemy. It can be applied to hunting. It can be applied to business. It can be applied to life. I mean, all these different things. But at the end of the day, you have to recognize the competition's you. It's not somebody else. Yes, if you're in a boxing match with somebody, that guy's the guy you got to knock out.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you see those guys, the champions, a lot of times pick the guy up and hug him. They're just there as the measuring post, but they're not really the competition. The competition is how hard did I work so that I can get to where I want to be. And, when we see it in the hunting industry, there's competition. Somebody's jealous of somebody's success. And so they do everything they can to try to minimize that success or to, just devalue that success. Well, yeah, he shot it over 80 yards away. That's unethical. Or he shot it on private land. Well, if I could hunt private land, I'd shoot as many elk as him. And, there's all these things that we can look at and become the victim and justify somebody else's success. But at the end of the day, me being successful as an elk hunter has no bearing on your success or your ability to be successful. There is, nobody is standing in your way of being successful or in my way of being successful other than me. No excuse in the world, no pack of wolves, no hunting pressure, no fishing game mismanagement. It's on me. Yeah, those other things become challenges, but if we embrace the challenge, we can reap the rewards and be successful. So I think we just really have to continually remind ourselves the battle isn't with somebody else, it's with me. And that helps us stay humble. It helps us not give in to jealousy, which is a pride. It helps us become better, which is what we're all hopefully aiming to do.
Well, anything going on right now with Elk 101?
Everything's going on.
Elk season's like a week away.
And 10 days from today, we'll be hunting elk in Idaho.
And you're going to do your video series.
Yeah, so we'll be doing Destination Elk again. It'll launch sometime late October, early November on the Elk 101 YouTube channel. We've got a ton of cool stuff coming with that. Some stuff that hasn't even been announced, but
nice.
New equipment we'll be using, new strategies for education, which, that's the whole point of Elk 101. That was the point of Destination Elk. Mm-hmm. We just want to share education and help other people become better elk hunters. And so we've got some new ways new platforms we're going to be able to do that through Destination Elk.
Awesome. Yeah. I've really tried in my videos from the bear hunt that I did in the tar hunt series we're dropping right now. I really have tried to make it more educational so that you're not just entertained, but you're also learning. Yeah. Like, oh, I see how they did that, or this is their strategy for this stock or whatever. Yeah. I think it's so visual. We're so visual. It's so nice to see that example play out in real time.
Totally.
But there's a lot of things that you could just maybe show the hunt, but not actually show the strategy.
Yeah.
And I want to try to step up the game there. So it's been cool.
Yep.
I've also put in like gear information stuff. Some of it is from partners that we have, but a lot of it's just REI brand type stuff that we use on backpack hunts and outdoors or just other hunting industry products that we just like and brands we believe in. And it's been really fun to do that as well. So,
yep.
So you got that, you have this Mountain Ops Ignite.
Yeah.
Which is bugleberry. Exactly what flavor is bugleberry?
Well, you just have to try it to find out. But it's guaranteed to ignite your success in September. No, it's a September only product. Mountain Ops is offering it just in September, and in honor of elk season, it's named bugleberry. You probably can describe the flavor better than I can, but
yeah,
it's.
I've been throwing it back a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it says, for a limited time, when you sign up for the Elk or University of Elk Hunting online course, you'll pick up some serious elk hunting knowledge, which it's true, as well as receive extra entries towards winning the elk truck.
Yeah. So we're giving away an elk hunting truck, Mountain Ops and Elk 101 teamed up on, and it's a sweet truck. The entire exterior has been revamped to become an elk hunter's truck. And it's a Ford F-150 Super Crew. It's got a lift, got beautiful tires and wheels, custom bumpers front and back. And
Ooh la la.
yeah, I drive it. They gave it to me to drive for the summer. We're going to actually drive it this fall as we can for Destination Elk. So when I say as I can,
Yeah.
we're not going to drive it to a trailhead where we're hunting and leave it parked there so everybody knows where we're hunting. So if you see the Destination Elk truck parked somewhere,
It's a decoy.
it's a decoy. We're not hunting there. I promise you that.
Or is he just saying that?
Yeah. No, I don't know. But if you do sign up for the University of Elk Hunting online course, you are going to get a lot of extra entries. So you get 20 extra entries to win the elk truck. Plus, if you buy Bugleberry during the month of September, you're going to get 10 extra entries. So
With each purchase?
with each purchase of Bugleberry, you have to use the code BUGLE when you sign up. And
Nice.
there's going to be a pre-sale also. And if you sign up during the pre-sale for Bugleberry Ignite, you get 20 extra entries. So
Well, when's the pre-sale?
August 25th through September 1st,
So that's right around the corner.
right around the corner.
Okay. And so you can visit elk101.com/online course. All
Actually,
one word.
visit /truck. And
Okay.
that'll give you all the details you need as far as signing up to win the truck,
Gotcha.
getting everything you need to.
elk101.com/truck.
Yeah.
Watch Destination Elk on elk101.com's YouTube.
Because that's when we're actually giving away the truck
Nice.
and a whole bunch of other gear.
So I'll say that this Bugleberry is a I think it's going to be Lamper's, one of Lamper's favorites.
Is he a fruity
He
candy
likes
guy?
pina colada.
Ooh.
And this has a pina colada, a real nice pina colada sort of flavor.
It's kind of a muted coconutish berry.
It's got a little berry though mixed
Yeah.
in it, so it's not so
Sweet.
yeah,
Overpowering.
It's not so pina colada.
Yeah.
But it's got that. It still has that pina colada sort of like I guess tinges of it. You know. Anyway, it's quite good. So it's a nice flavor to mix it up with whatever your existing favorite flavor of Mountain Ops is.
It's available in the tubs or in the trail packs.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a few. You got to rep it. You got to run it if you're going to elk hunt, right? Like you got.
That's what it's for. It's there to bring you success in September. It's Bugleberry. It's only available in September. It's an elk hunting drink.
So when you buy this, you said the code Bugle.
Yeah.
Do you need to put the code Bugle in, or can you just buy this?
Put the code Bugle in because you're going to get, again, the elk truck. You're going to get an extra chance for every $5 you spend. Plus, when you buy Bugleberry, you're getting 10 extra chances. If you buy Bugleberry during the pre-sale, you get 20 extra entries in the truck.
Jeez.
Sign up for the online course, you get 20 extra entries in the truck. And
Gotcha.
so, yeah, you could end up with 100 entries for this truck if you bought Bugleberry and signed up for the online course.
Wow. So someone's got to win that truck.
Yeah.
I've been present at the Mountain Ops headquarters when the truck winners show up.
Oh, have you?
'Cause they've done 3, I think, this year.
Yeah.
You know, they've done a couple, 4 maybe actually. And it's really cool because, some dude will show up who won a whole freaking truck. And when you look at the size of our community, it's not that big.
No.
And so the odds of winning are pretty darn good. When you compare it to maybe a national brand, that you're competing for. So it's pretty cool. And they always show up, and it's so interesting to hang out with them and to see how super jacked they are. Because if I won a truck, I'd be that'd make my year.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's hard for me because I'm having trouble separating because I'm driving the truck right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, this is sweet. I get to drive this truck. Somebody gets to drive it and own it.
Yeah.
And that's, take it home and keep it. And I know my time's temporary with it.
It's very.
I will tell you this, the tires do incredibly well in mud. We took it out to get some content on it, some photos and stuff, and there was a pretty good mud hole.
Nice.
And they said, let's run it through that and get some action shots of it. We threw some mud.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for you. Excited for Bugleberry. Folks, go to Well, you can go to Mountain Ops and get it, and you can go to elk101.com/truck.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, Cory.
Hey, thanks
for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Good luck this season.
You too.
Stay gritty.